am such a fan of Nerida. She is a legend. She really is. You know, some of the best skincare founders in the business have said that Nerida has taught them more than they learned in school. So she really is a genius at her craft. And we are excited to talk all things skincare with her. I'm just waiting for her to join in. Hi, Nerida.
Hello, Brittany. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm really good. Thank you. I'm so excited to be here and see you, your beautiful face.
Oh, thank you. You too. I'm just thrilled for this conversation because I've known you for years and you've been such a trusted partner of New Beauties and just such a source of knowledge about everything skin inside and out. And you're also on Brain Trust, so thank you so much for that.
Yes.
And you are a facialist to the stars. Jennifer Garner is one of your clients, and
Yes.
I can't say enough things about you. So for those who don't know you, can you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got started in skin?
Absolutely. Well, I've been in skincare for 42 years. I actually graduated in 1978, so it's a really long time. I'm from Sydney, Australia. I did most of my beauty training all there. I studied in a lot of different things because, when you're an esthetician and you're working with skin and understanding that there is so many things that influence the skin, internally. So I studied Reiki and kinesiology and bush essences and iridology and nutrition. And I spent 12 years of just studying different things, which really helped me to have such an understanding for the skin on a whole different level. And so I'm really glad that I pushed myself to do that. And then I came to America almost 30 years ago. So, I started my first business when I was 19 in Australia, my second one at 21. I moved here when I was almost 30. So, yeah.
Wow. I mean, you really, I think you speak to having a background in all these different things. And I think with skincare concerns, they can come from so many different places. So having this background, this diverse background really speaks to your knowledge about the skin. I'm like kind of fangirling right now. I'm just so happy to talk to you.
You're so funny.
You are known for your in-depth skin analysis and your facial map. And,
yes.
I would love it if you could explain to everybody what exactly is facial mapping and how do you approach an analysis on a patient that you've never seen before?
Well, first of all, face mapping is it's being able to recognize different parts of the face and there is a relationship with certain parts of the face to certain organs within the body. And, in face mapping, there are, if you Google face mapping, there are a lot of different, areas that we don't all say the same thing, right? I mean, there's some that are standard and some that really are very, very different. But the one thing that I will say is that, the way that I have felt even through my 5-star method approach on my packages is that it's all about, it is really through hands-on work that I've seen that, oh no, this definitely has a relationship to, the large intestine or something. So when I'm doing skin analysis, when clients first come to see me, and admittedly, I will say, a lot of my clients come to me with acnetic, problematic skin, and where they've used everything and they've tried everything and they've, been on some antibiotic for a gazillion years and still they have acne. And it doesn't matter if it's, the younger hormonal or if it's a more mature skin that's still dealing with acne and scarring and, those painful nodules. So my approach is always, everybody's different. And it's really important to recognize that and just being really thorough. When I'm doing skin analysis, I'm looking at everything. I'm looking at, every square inch of the face and the neck and the décolleté. I mean, it is a full-on thing, because you have to, you know, you can't be lazy with this. You can't just have a standard facial of cleanse, you know, just certain steps. You really have to be able to adapt and do what your client needs at that moment when they're on your table. So, you know, skin analysis is about being really thorough. And it is about being able to recognize, you know, what you're looking at. I mean, when you first come out of beauty school, you know, like you're looking at a face, but you don't even know what to do almost, you know. So I always suggest to people to have a checklist beside them. And on that checklist, you've got, you know, skin type, like what is their skin type? So it forces you to look and see, you know, oh, skin type, let's look at that. Does she have large pores? Oh, let's look and see. Because in the beginning, it's very nerve-wracking for esties, because they're more concerned about, you know, just having flow with the facial, or just, or their massage movements or something like that. Where in actual fact, it's okay to say to your client, you know, I want to be really thorough today. Give me a couple of minutes. And then you've got your little checklist that your client doesn't even have to see, you know, to go over to make sure, until you train your eye to be able to recognize certain things. So skin analysis is about being really thorough. It is about taking an individual and making, you know, getting their home care regimen, as well as the treatment that you're doing on them that day, that it be right and perfect for them. And with, you know, with the face mapping, it really influences a lot of my conversation with my clients, because so much is food related, you know, especially when you're dealing with acne, which I am. And, you know, whether it be, you know, mid-cheek, sort of small intestine, or large intestine down here, it's being able to recognize what the actual pimple or congestion, what it looks like, and then being able to translate that and having a conversation with your client about foods. Because so much of it, as I said, is it's so much of it's from the inside. I mean, we're just a reflection of what's going on the inside, you know. So it's really important to have an understanding of that, because otherwise you can't get results, you know. And we all want to see and get great results for our clients. So you have to have an understanding of that. And I certainly, you know, talk a lot about it in my 5-star method. So. Yeah, and in great detail.
So you said the word esties, which I love. You call estheticians esties. Is that something that you started, or is that an industry term that I just didn't know about until I met you?
No, it is an industry term. It's you know, it's just you know, it's just a fun thing. Like, you know, when I'm around all my fellow esties, it's like I feel like at home. You know, it's like we all know the things that drive us crazy, and you know, it's just a cute, fun kind of a term. It's like, you know, these are my esty people, you know.
Yeah.
So
I love it.
Yeah, there's a closeness with that, because a lot of, you know, esties, we are emotional people. We're wanting to help everybody. We're these nurturing, feeling people, and so it is something that's just a nice, you know, knowing. Yeah.
So with skin, you know, skin analysis, you know, a lot of facial bars, if you will call them, they're kind of becoming like this new trend, like blowout bars, where you're kind of in and out in a very short time. You get the basics, you know, the cleanse, maybe a little bit of extraction, some dermaplaning or whatever, and you're out. So what are your tips for people who are using this trend as their only means of getting a facial, and they're not having that in-depth look at their skin?
I think that, you know, if you have a pretty normal skin and you're just wanting to, you know, get a glow because you're going to an event or you're going out, you know, to something special, and, you know, a lot of these places, they do massage. You know, they cleanse the skin, they exfoliate, and maybe they do a massage. And I think that massage is always something that's so beneficial anyway to the skin, because it brings oxygen to the blood and it stimulates muscle tone. So I think that, you know, I think that if you're going for that purpose, then I think, you know, they're great. But I don't feel, you know, number one, they don't have the time to really spend with you to even explain what's going on. And a big part of, you know, what we do is, you know, is talking to our clients. You know, it's having that discussion with them about their lifestyle and, you know, foods possibly, and, you know, and their home care regimen, and just making sure that we get it all right. Because if it's not right and we haven't put something together, especially for them, then they're not going to see the results, you know. And so, you know, in these fast areas where they're zipping in to have a quick facial, I think, you know, for massage or just, you know, a good cleansing and a good exfoliation, because so many people don't cleanse their skin well enough. So I think it's okay for that. But I think if, you know, for people that really are serious about their skin and they really want to take their skin to the next level, then it's not going to be enough, you know. Or if they've got acne and, you know, they've got scarring and things that really require a certain amount of things done in a treatment, then it's probably not going to make that much of a difference. I mean, you know, sometimes I might do a little high frequency and do some shorter things, but, you know, everything, you know, when you're doing a treatment, it's really important to be thorough. And when you're dealing with acne, you have to be really thorough to get results. You know, it's, you know, no one wants to just have, you know, have it take a year or two. You know, you want to see results very quickly when you're dealing with acne, because it's incredibly, you know, it's depressing to a lot of people. And it's, you know, people that by the time they've already come to me, they've already tried. Even the dermatologist, in a lot of cases, you know, they've already tried a lot of different things. So they're in a very, you know, a flat place of just like, I've heard it all. I'm really, you know, I'm really struggling. So it's, you know, that takes a, you know, it takes time to be able to, you know, build their trust and to talk to them and communicate to them about everything that we need to be able to take their skin to that next level. You know, because it is a partnership that you have with your client when you're to get their skin better. You know, you really very often have to get them back to basics. You've got to get great balance in their skin because it's already been stripped, over processed in some way. And now we've got to get them back to basics, because you can't treat a skin when it's like that. So, you know, it does require a certain, you know, it requires patience, but it requires a very clear communication and a trust, you know, that, look, you know, I say to my clients, I know you've gone through everything. I mean, you know, it's heartbreaking to me, really. If you see what I see on my table, it's absolutely heartbreaking. But at the same time, it's like, I know what I can do, and I know I can change their skin, and I really need them to know and trust me with that. Yeah. Because basically at that point, I guarantee my work. I say, you are going to see this, and it's going to take X amount of time. And I think that, you know, that's really important. And you need time to do that. You know, you need to have that time, which, you know, in the shorter 30-minute little facials, you're not going to have that sort of time. But I mean, they're great for pick-me-ups, or a little mask, or, you know, a cleanse, exfoliation and a mask and a, but you know, but as I said, a lot of the clients, you know, by the time they come to me, I mean, they're serious about, I want my skin to the next level. And even if they're a dry and mature skin that's just got a really dull, tired, flat skin, it's like, to take it to that next level, we need to massage your skin a lot. You know, we need to do certain things. So it takes a little more time.
So speaking of facials, how often should somebody be getting a facial, and does it matter what age you are? So for example, if you're in your 30s or someone in their 60s, does the frequency at which you get a facial matter?
You know, I think that if you are an oily, acnetic skin, initially, I say to my clients that I need to see you 3 times pretty close together. And that could be every two weeks. And then I can start bumping them back once we get their skin to a certain plateau. So an oily, acnetic skin, you know, it requires extractions. To get results, you have to do extractions. So they generally need to have more facials more frequently. And it doesn't matter if they're 30 or if they're 60. If they're oily and they need extractions, I need to see them more frequently. For a more mature, drier skin, you know, it's really, facial massage is so important, because you know, of what I said before about stimulating muscle tone, you know, which makes your skin tight, right? So we all want that. But also in bringing oxygen to the blood, it moves lymph, you know, and it gives the skin a refinement and a firmness, and it makes it more youthful. It just does, you know. So massage is a huge part of my practice too. And I think that it's generally, I would say, more an oily acnetic, doesn't matter what age, it goes more by that skin type. And a mature skin can benefit too, you know, because as we get older, our skin gets looser and we want it to be tight, you know. And there's not a lot, like the neck and the décolleté too. Most people, they're not so great about taking things down onto that area. So it's really, you know, it's nice when you have treatments frequently that you can really kind of, you know, that you're really putting a lot of effort into that. And once they feel that themselves too, they're more inclined to think, oh yes, I need to do more here. Because most people, they don't really look down here. And often this is an area that really does show age faster than up here. So it's really, you know, it's really important to work this area too, because the décolleté, you want to have a pretty décolleté when you get older. You want to be able to wear strappy dresses and just feel good, you know, because the face you can cover with makeup and do a lot with, right? But the décolleté and the neck are the two areas that I think require, you know, extra work. And so, of course, that happens to be more work as we get older. So, you know, there's the two, you know, if you're oily, it doesn't matter how old you are. And definitely if you're dry skin, definitely the mature route. You know, you are going to benefit more with having facials for sure.
So how much of our skin type is genetically predetermined? You know, can we, like, if we have acne, can we blame our parents? Like, you know, how much of that is hereditary?
Yeah. You know, it is, yes, it's definitely, you know, genetically, we come into this world with weakened organs from our parents and, or grandparents, and definitely, you know, you can change it a lot though, if you understand your skin and if you have the, you know, the products and tools to support it. But a big part of it is that you have to understand where you're at with your skin. And what a lot of people, you know, what happens with a lot of people is they don't know what's going on really. They know they just don't like it. And therefore they're sort of grabbing at a lot of different things to try and fix it. But if you have to understand what's going on with your skin, you know, and I really mean that in a way that, you know, because people tend to be more aggressive and they go for the stronger stuff rather than being consistent, because they want the quick fix, right? And that's not the way to go. You have to be consistent, and you have to take things gradually, and you have to wean into certain things. And if you're a 26-year-old, you don't want to be using something really strong. And I'm talking, you know, really strong, even with vitamin C's or hyaluronic acid, not just retinols. You know, it's you have to wean into things, because you're going to create a lot of sensitivity for yourself later in life, and then you're not going to be able to use any of it. So it's very important to not go up here without climbing up here, because you're going to create a problem for yourself later. And then, as I said, you may never be able to use any retinols. So you really don't want to be too aggressive. And I think that, you know, I think that I'm saying all of this, it's because, you know, most people, if they've had a father or a mother that had acne, you know, one of those kids is going to have that issue, and or pitting or scarring. But of course it is, you know, we do inherit these things from our parents. And, you know, ultimately we inherit a lot of things, you know, internally, weakened organs, weakened stomachs, which, you know, can't digest certain foods well, a weakened gallbladder, which can't, you know, help so much with a lot of our fatty acids and things either. So I think, you know, there's a lot to take into that, but it doesn't mean that it has to be that way, is my point. You know, it's like you can really change skin so easily. I mean, it's really easy to do that if you know what you're doing, you know, and you recognize what's going on with your skin. And there's so many amazing products out there that, you know, I mean, we just have so much now. It's really great, you know.
Yeah. So, you know, when I've had facials, I've had, despite all of the products that I use, I have a pretty, you know, robust skincare regimen thanks to my job, but I have been told that I have dehydrated skin on occasion. And I'm wondering, you know, what's the difference between dry and dehydrated skin? And what is the best way to treat it?
Actually, it's a really good question because it's very confusing for a lot of people, and even a lot of people in the industry. You know, a dry skin is a skin that does not have any sebaceous glands, or very little. You know, we have a combination dry, which means, you know, mostly dry with a little bit of oil, and a dry skin with no sebaceous glands. So no oil means no blackheads, okay? Now, when you have, I just forgot your question here.
Oh, dry versus dehydrated skin.
Dehydrated, thank you. So, sorry, thank you. So, you know, a dehydrated skin, and this is it's interesting because I have to explain a little bit with this, okay? Because I want people to understand something. I want you to understand that you can drink, you know, 8 glasses of water a day and still be incredibly dehydrated. So, you know, what they did, you know, with a lot of the athletes, they did this whole testing, you know, many years back, and they tested a lot of athletes that were, you know, drinking a ton of water, and it's just like, why are they so dehydrated? Because for some people, if you drink a lot of water, they just pee it out. It doesn't stick and hydrate the organs. So that's why I talk a lot about, you know, adding to your water, okay? And that could be a little bit of lemon juice. It could be cranberry juice, and it's half an inch of cranberry, you know, the real cranberry juice in the bottle, the nasty tasting bitter cranberry juice, adding it to, you know, and adding water to it. Or it could be orange juice. It's juices, because all different types of juices hydrate different organs in the body. And, you know, and just to go over here just for a second, and I've told this story before, but it was a client of mine had been trying for 7 years to have a baby, and she couldn't. She had had it, you know, all the different in vitro, all these things done to try and have a baby. She ended up going to this naturopath. He said, your uterus is really dehydrated, and I want you to add a little bit of orange juice to your water. And, you know, now she has 3 kids, right? So I want people to understand that just drinking water, it's not necessarily right for everybody. Just plain water, whether it be electrolytes you add into it, or it's your, you know, your alkaline water, whatever. It's got to, you know, I always say to people, make sure it tastes good on your palate. Like maybe a Fuji water is going to taste different from, you know, a Smart water, for instance. Yeah. And have the water that tastes good on your palate, because most likely that's the one that's better for you. So I think that's something that's important to talk about with hydration, because, you know, people say, but Nerida, I drink so much water. How can my skin be dehydrated? And then that's when this whole conversation comes in. So I change that up, and we change up their type of water. So that's important to recognize. Now, when you have what we call surface dryness, when you have, you know, dehydration on just the outer layer, but the underlayers are hydrated. So meaning the underlayers are organs, internal, outer layer is environmental, okay? So it's when you start to see premature aging. There's fine little lines that are not really wrinkles, and you know they shouldn't be there, but they're dehydrated. It's a dehydrated skin. Now this is something that I see all the time on people that use foaming cleansers. I mean, that's just it. It really is. They, you know, for people, whether you have an oily skin or not, a dry skin, you still have to use moisturizer. But what I think people have to understand is a moisturizer for an oily skin is, it's not nourishing, it's healing. you know. A moisturizer for a dry skin, of course we want to nourish it, but and protect it. So they're different. But a lot of people with oily skin, they're often not using anything.
Right.
So they're very surface dry. And that's something that is a huge problem. And in fact, it's actually the biggest problem I see in my business, is that, especially with oily skins, they come in, they're so stripped, and their skin's so beaten and so sensitive, and it's so surface dry, you can't even extract blackheads out of it, because the blackhead itself is so dry when it comes out. And those blackheads, like, if you're not hydrating and keeping your skin, dewy and sort of healthy, and feeding it, then those blackheads are like, they form scar tissue almost. And then you get a lot of little bumps under the skin, which are really hard to extract. I mean, then they've got to go to a dermatologist, and they've got to do their magic over there to, get rid of the bumps. So it's important to understand the difference with that, So dehydration is, a dehydrated skin is internally, your organs are dehydrated. Dehydration on the outside is purely environmental, or it's just your products that you're using, and that is an easy fix. And most of the time, people that are surface dry, it's their cleanser. They're not cleansing with the right cleanser.
So actually, somebody's asking, what are good moisturizers to use for oily skin? So are there any you recommend, or also any ingredients people can look for in their moisturizers for oily skin?
It's always when people ask me questions about products, and I don't usually go there too much with giving brand names, but generally it's, you want something that's non-comedogenic, okay? And I think that, that anything that is of a light texture, that, because it's all about a formulation, honestly. If you're, hyaluronic acid, I like hyaluronic acid, but I don't like hyaluronic acid when it's too high, of a percentage of hyaluronic acid. I like it because, it hydrates the skin. It's obviously not ideal in areas where it's really dry, because it is a humectant, and it draws moisture to itself. But I like it very much for an oily skin, and I work with it a lot because it's so healing. It's hydrating and healing, and not over nourishing. So, aloe vera is another one that I really like, because it's so healing. And and I'm not talking about breaking the plant and putting it on your face. I'm just talking about a product that's mostly aloe vera. I think that's, pretty great. So, I mean, those are two that I will say that, look for them being high on the ingredient list, mostly because they are healing. But again, don't reach for the really high percentages necessarily. Just, keep it, be a light lotion. And most of the time, if you've got a good cleanser that's not stripping it and drying and making your skin feel tight and squeaky clean, a lotion that one of those that I just mentioned is fantastic. Yeah.
Somebody's asking what foods to avoid for sebum productive skin.
Well, there are, if it's, sebum production and it's just oil, is a little bit different from sebum production that is causing, a lot of clogged pores, congestion and pimples. So, the big ones with oil is staying away from oil, okay? And meaning that maybe, your avocado oil, your olive oil is fine, but peanut oil is a really bad one. And even for myself, who, I'm a combination dry skin, I never get pimples. But if I eat peanuts, I will get pimples. It's not necessarily chocolate, and that what a lot of people think. It is more the pimple problematic foods that I see most of the time is going to be your peanuts. It could be macadamia nuts. It's any oily nut. And it is also, dairy is a big problem for people, and citrus, egg yolks too. It's a certain kind of fat. But I'm also not a fan of your omega-3s and 6 for people with oily skin. In fact, I was speaking to someone, I think in Taiwan the other night, and, I was looking at her skin, and she had, you know, open pores and oil, pretty skin, but open pores and oil. And she said she was taking massive doses of vitamin, you know, your B3 and your omegas. And she said because she doesn't really like the taste of fish anymore. But you see, you know, people need to be very intuitive with their body in that, listen to it. You know, if you don't like fish, it's probably not good for you anymore either. But your omegas, your fatty acids for people with oily skin are a problem, and I take them off I take them off those fish oils and that too, because it's something, and like, you know, someone will come in and say, but Nerida, but those vitamins are good for you. And I mean, they're good for some people, absolutely.
Right.
But you have to understand, you know, not all vitamins are right for somebody, you know, and everybody's different. And I think that people really need to listen and understand that everybody is different. So you're not going to be doing exactly the same as somebody else, because you're different.
Right. So another thing I want to ask you is about, going back to facials, is about steam, because I get a lot of questions about this. And I personally, you know, have been in facials where they say, oh, I don't want to use steam on you. And then others will use a lot of steam. And so I'm wondering, are there certain skin types that can handle steam and some that can't? And why is that?
Yes, absolutely. You know, I love steam. I love it. And I love it that it has a little ozone in it, you know, a germicidal steam. I love that. I find myself using it less than I ever did, but there's a reason for it. You know, everything, again, in what we do in our treatment room has to have a purpose for that client. So
Right.
the times that I'm not using steam is if I'm feeling heat in the skin. And by the time I cleanse their skin, I can feel it. If there's heat coming up, I'm not likely going to use steam, because more and more people today just have inflammation in their body. And, you know, heat makes, you know, melasma worse. I mean, it's all these things that, you know, melasma, for instance, fluctuates with lighting, with your monthly cycle, with heat. It just does. So sometimes if someone has a lot of melasma, or if they have heat, then, and sometimes rosacea and eczema and dermatitis, you know, I'm not going to use it that much, but I also love it, and I can also use it, but at a very far distance, you know. So, I mean, more times than not, I use steam, but I do have it at a distance. You know, the skin should not sweat and perspire with steam on your face, because if you have the steam that close where it starts to sweat, then you are at that point dehydrating the skin. So you better push it back. You know, it shouldn't be that close. But I like to have it sometimes at a distance, so it's almost a very light mist.
Okay.
In a lot of my YouTube videos, though, I don't have it going, and people say, well, why aren't you using steam? It's just mostly because of the sound and the camera, and I'm not going to be doing the extractions that they see when I don't have the camera on, you know what I mean? So it's sort of, so a lot of people have asked me about that before, because in my videos, I don't use steam a lot. And for those two reasons, because I mean, you know, some people I need to extract for 2 hours, and I can't have the camera there the whole time, you know? Yeah.
2 hours?
Oh yeah. No, I have to be, when I'm doing extractions, my clients, no, I'm very thorough, and I need to be, and it's how you get results. You have to be thorough. Yeah. So, you know, I love steam, as I said, but it's not wrong or right. You know, I mean, it's just whatever is right for that person is what's important. Yeah.
Okay. And you mentioned inflammation, and I want to talk about this, because this is, you know, there's this term inflammation right now, and it's just, everyone's talking about inflammation. It's like the buzzword in beauty. And I wanted to know how does skin, you know, how does inflammation, where does it come from?
Where does it come from? You know, it's interesting, and I'm going to have to backtrack a little bit to explain this, okay? In iridology, when you study the eye, you're studying the white of the eye, and you're studying the colored part of the eye, which is called the iris. Now, the iris is, it's a clock, and it shows every part of your body. Every second of that is a different part of the body, whether it be out around the outer part of the iris, being the scurf rim, it's the lymphatic area, it's the circulation in the skin. If it's around the pupil, it's all the gut and the stomach. 100 years ago, my grandmother's constitution in her iris was like this. It was a very tight network, meaning she could digest certain foods that were raw. She could digest anything, and anybody living in that time could, because we did not have pollution. We didn't have all the pesticides and all the crap that one puts into foods and things now that we deal with, that we don't even see. So now if you look at children and, you know, a little older than that, you're going to see that constitution is not like that. It has holes in it, and it's what we call lesions. And so what that means is that our bodies are not as strong as they used to be, meaning we're better to have foods that are cooked a little bit. You know, we don't want to be reinventing the wheel, and we're better to have salads that don't have 10 different vegetables in it. We're better to simplify things, okay? So now back to your question of inflammation. So you have that understanding in mind. There is more inflammation in this world today than I've ever seen before. And I've done hundreds, like over 100,000 facials. I mean, you know, this has been my life. Yeah. So I have never felt the heat that I feel in people today coming out of their skin. And so where that comes from is it comes from, you know, our bodies not being as strong as they used to be. And therefore we're not able to digest, you know, the spicy foods, the, you know, inflammation foods, the tomatoes and, you know, the nightshades, bell peppers, you know, tomatoes and bell peppers are huge inflammation foods. And that even, you know, dictates in joints, potatoes, all your nightshades, you know, that's why, you know, internally, you know, my mother, who had very bad arthritis, rheumatoid, and osteo, I think she had everything. She even had it in her ears, she said, arthritis. She could not have tomatoes and she couldn't have potatoes. And when she did, you know, her joints really swelled up. And it's the same, you know, that just is that's just an indication of what's going on the inside. So what I'm seeing now is I'm seeing younger people, you know, especially, you know, if you have a little red wine too, it just doesn't work for people. You know, some of the certain alcohols, and that they're stimulants. And someone who has inflammation, they don't need stimulating. They can't take heat. They shouldn't be having really high, you know, going to have, what do they call it, yoga in heat chambers. Oh, you know what I mean? Hot yoga. They shouldn't be having really hot drinks. You know, they shouldn't be having really hot showers. It has to be something that is, you know, you have to understand that if you are flushing easy, then you have to take a step back and look at the foods that you're eating. And that's really important. But I will tell you, more people in today have inflammation in their body than ever before. And inflammation is a very vulnerable place to be for infection in many areas. You know, if your body, if your body's inflamed, you know, you are susceptible to more things, to getting more things. And so it's very important that that people recognize it. And again, it's something that I feel, you know, when you simplify things, and I'm going to talk about foods here, you know, when you're really conscious of what you're eating and simplifying things, intuitively, you will feel, does that food make me bloated? Well, if it makes me bloated, then you know what? I'm allergic to it. So, you know, every food has its own enzyme chain. And you know, if you're eating that food over and over again and you become allergic to it, or if you're having something you're allergic to, you've got a lot of antihistamines, you've got a lot of stuff floating around, histamines floating around in your body, you know. So you want to just take a step back. And I say for people that really struggle with this heat, you know, to have a look at what it is that they're eating, to not have drinks that are so hot, to don't have those really hot showers, because most of the people that have inflammation, they like heat, they like hot showers, and they like those sorts of things. So often what you get with heat is you get a very fluidy skin. You know, you get a skin that retains a lot of water. And so it has a lot to do with their circulation. So it's very important when people are walking that they swing their arm back. You know, often you'll see people running and they've got their arms in front. You want to move, you want to stimulate those big lymph nodes under your arms and your groin. You want to get movement. Movement is very important because our bodies are made of, you know, 70% water or more if you're younger, less if you're older. And whenever, I always say this, you know, whenever a stream is moving, it stays clean. But if it becomes still and stagnant, it's dirty and rancid. And that's your body. Just think about your body is more water than anything else. I mean, how extraordinary is that? Yeah. So you've got to keep it clean. You've got to be flushing. You've got to be drinking fluids, and you've got to have movement. And, you know, and that will help inflammation. But if you are somebody that gets hot when you have a little bit of wine, you notice you get rosy in the cheeks, then you need to cut back your inflammation foods. And those are the foods that I mentioned. Yeah.
What about sugar, though? Because I've heard that sugar can cause major issues with inflammation and the skin. So is that a big culprit too?
You see, you know, I'm so glad you're asking this because there's so much to this, and I want to be able to help people understand something. Everybody's different, okay? Now, what that means is, for instance, I'm going to tell you something, okay? For my body, I can have anything from a cow. I can eat cheese. I can eat beef. I can eat all of that kind of fat, and my cholesterol is low. Now, if I eat leafy greens and I eat chicken and I eat fish, my cholesterol will be high. You see? And you see, that's why when people go on a diet, like the Atkins diet, for instance, all beef, cheese, fat, some people keel over and have a heart attack, and other people are so healthy. And that's what I need people to understand, that we are all different. If you feel good on a certain diet, then it's probably right for you, but don't torture yourself. You know, like if you know, look at Nathan Pritikin, a very tall, lean man he was, okay? His diet was big on grains and no fat in his diet. My sister, who was married to a very tall, lean Asian man, was as healthy as he stopped wearing glasses on the Nathan Pritikin diet. His eyesight improved. My sister, who was a curvy, you know, different body type to Nathan Pritikin on the Nathan Pritikin, got very sick. So, you know, so it's important that people understand that what's right for one is not necessarily other. So now back to answer your question about sugar, is that some people can have sugar, I mean an abundance of sugar, and will never have sugar diabetes or even a touch of it. Other people are very sensitive to it. It is all about body types. If you get
Oh, I think you froze. We'll get you back.
keratosis pilaris on your arms, on the backs of your arms, you are very likely sensitive to sugar. So whenever I see that, and sometimes I get a little bit of KP on the side of the face, and it's those tiny, tiny little bumps, those little bumps. It's a sensitive to sugar, and a lot of young kids have it because, you know, and they grow out of it as they get older, but because, you know, a lot of young kids have a lot of sugar. But if you have KP, sugar's not great for you. I'm going to tell you that. Now, if you ask a doctor what I'm saying to you, they're going to say, I have no idea, I've never heard that. I am telling you, this is something that I've studied a lot about this. I know the skin. It really speaks to me. If you have KP, stop eating sugar.
That's me.
Is it? You have KP?
I have KP, and I use every scrub and every oil that I can get my hands on to soften it, but I love my sugar. Everyone in the office knows, you know, my coworker Liz and I, we always get the candy. We're like, you know, into the sweets, but I never realized that there was a correlation between the two.
Well, the other thing too is that when you have KP, like even a little bit of sugar affects you. You see what I mean? It's like, it's the same as like, you know, you meet somebody who's a smoker. They've smoked all their life. They live to be 110 and no problem with their lungs. And then other people never smoked in their life, but they lived with a smoker, or you know, then and it's affected them. You see, and that's what people have to understand. If I can drum this into people today, it is, you have to understand that everybody's different. You come into this world with weakened organs from your parents. Probably someone, Brittany, in your family, parents or grandparents, had diabetes, you know, or were hypoglycemic, like had a sensitivity to sugar. And so, you know, it doesn't just happen. You know, it's, we all come in with weakened things. A lot of people have stomach issues. And I'm finding a lot of really young people today have stomach issues. And of course, you know, their parents probably had stomach issues, their grandparents. And if they've been on antibiotics for any length of time, some people I've met have been on antibiotics for, you know, 6 or 7 years consistently because they have acne. Wow. And when they come to see me, they still have acne. Now, those antibiotics, what those antibiotics have done to somebody's stomach, I could cry right now. I mean, seriously, it's very, very disturbing to me. So, you know, I need everybody to just think a little bit. You know, just be a little bit intuitive and feel like if you get bloating and you're having a salad, like if I eat lettuce, I get bloating. It doesn't work for me. And by the way, it'll make my cholesterol high. So go figure. But you see, you know, it's just a very interesting, it's a very interesting thing, but it's real. And this is what I know. Phone calls. I've studied. Oh, it's like it, and I know that this kind of thing is very, you know, it's very real. It's how I change people's skin. It's once you can recognize what's going on, you can change people's skin, and that's what makes a big difference. I mean, that's what we're here to do, right?
Yeah. Well, I want to ask. I'm seeing a lot of comments about Millia. So I wonder if you could speak a little bit about that, what it is and how to treat it.
Sure. You know, Millia is, it's a fatty ball under the skin that it really doesn't have any relationship to oil necessarily. You can be a drier skin and have Millia, because Millia comes from your gut. You know, it's a fat. People that eat a lot of dairy, that shouldn't be eating dairy, that have high cholesterol, will have Millias. And the older you get, you know, when you extract them, they have an odor to them like I cannot even tell you. It is so, because it's coming from the stomach. And sometimes you can get Millias from using creams that are too nourishing. So often if, say, somebody's had eye surgery done, you know, and they've been using Vaseline or a really thick sort of a product that leaves a film on the skin where the skin isn't really kind of breathing, it's like a raincoat, then that can also create Millia. So often people get them around the eye. But you also have to understand this part of the face is the stomach area too, and the small intestine. So most Millias on people, you are going to see them either around the eye or in this area here, because it's where they're not digesting fat, you know, and it's that body type again where, you know, you shouldn't be having cheese, you know, unlike me that never gets Millias, and I can eat cheese and cow and my cholesterol will be fantastic, you know what I'm saying? But it's just it's a very interesting thing. But Millia is too much dairy generally, you know. Sometimes, as I said, it could be a really nourishing cream that is just suffocating your skin, and it's way too much. It's a young person using a cream for an 80-year-old, you know what I mean? Yes.
A super rich.
That's the one.
Okay. So also I'm seeing a lot of questions about blackheads around the nose. What are the best ways to treat that?
You know, blackheads, you know, I have blackheads around my nose. Okay. It's oil. Blackheads is not bad. You can squeeze them, and yes, they will be right back a couple of days later. It's just oil, and it's that oxidation, you know, that is why they go black. But what's important is that you keep your pores clean. So your cleansing is really, really important. You have to count when you cleanse. I tell people, because most people are so quick to clean their face, they don't do it properly. They just want to put that serum on or that nighttime moisturizer. They don't clean their face properly. And, you know, most people should be wearing sunblock. They should be wearing a protective type of makeup with sunblock, something when they go out. So you know what that means? That means a double cleanse. You should be double cleansing your skin every night. And that first cleanse, you need to take it off onto a washcloth, a clean, wet washcloth, warm, wet washcloth. If you are cleaning your skin, and in some cases, for some people, exfoliation is really important too, then your blackheads should be minimal. They should be small. You know, there are certain things that keeps pores small. And I know a lot of people say to me, you can't shrink a pore. I say, oh, yes, I can. And I do it all the time. And if you look at photos on people that I've treated, whether it's on YouTube or on the website, if you see photos and you zoom in on someone's pores, you will see, if you zoom in on the after, their pores are smaller. But the only way to get a pore smaller is that you have to, number one, have a clean pore. You've got to cleanse so well, and you can't be lazy with that. You've got to be consistent, and that nighttime cleanse is very important. And as I said, for certain skins, exfoliation is really important too, but not granular. We want to just keep that. We want to have a buffing one that has that you know, buffing effect. We don't want to go scratching. And then you have to use, you know, AHAs or retinol. You've got to use something to stimulate the fibroblast cells. The only way to keep your skin firm and keep your wrinkles not as deep and keep your pore size small is you've got to use actives. And actives are AHAs and retinols. And your AHAs being glycolic, lactic, any of malic, there's so many, you know, citric acid. I mean, there's all of these ones. But you have to use that because that's what keeps them small, and you've got to use them every day. That's how I keep my clients' skin pore size small.
For the double cleanse, because I see a question about that, do you recommend an oil first and then like a cream or milk cleanser after, or what is your preferred double cleanse?
You know, I think it's a very personal thing. Honestly, I'm not a huge oil person. That's the truth. I find oils tricky. You know, and they work well for some, and it's great. But most people that come in to see me that are using oil cleansers, their skin is not clean. I like non-foaming, obviously. I like either gel or milky or gelée or any of those types of cleansers. I'm not a foaming person. I'm not a huge oil person. But a lot of people like oil. And I think if you're a drier skin, a combination drier skin, then it's fine. But when it comes to product in general, it's all about formulas. You know, coconut oil, I think, is disgusting for the face in its raw state. But, you know, I think that it's important that, you know, you've got to just try things. But to keep your skin clean, you've got to spend the time and you've got to count 30 seconds, at least 30 seconds. Circular motions, get under any fine facial hair, you know, all of that's really important. And, you know, make sure they do out by the ear, especially an oily skin person. They get blackheads all everywhere, you know, inside the ear. I mean, but I think it's, you know, you can do an oil cleanse and you can do a cream. If you are, you know, probably a more normal combination drier skin. And if that's what you like and it feels good and your skin feels good. But if your skin is not looking great and you're doing that, then I would say change it. Because your cleansing is 50% of your regimen. It is a really important step of your routine. And it sets a slate for everything else. So it's very important you get that right.
Yeah. And, you know, at NewBeauty, we're always telling people, why not invest in a good cleanser and spend the time cleansing? Because everything else that you're investing in after, all these really expensive anti-aging active products, they're not going to do anything if you don't have a clean slate.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, it's
it
really
doesn't matter how much you spend on these. I mean, it's such. I mean, it is so hard to find a good cleanser, and it's been a mission for me for some time in working in, you know, coming up with some things. But it's just it's really hard to find a great cleanser. You know, there are so many great serums, there's so many great creams, but it's really hard to get a great cleanser. And a great cleanser meaning it's going to clean your skin really well, and it's not going to make your skin surface dry, because a lot of skins are really surface dry, and it's a huge problem. So, you know, you do have to invest in a good cleanser. It's absolutely right what you're saying.
And I think, you know, I think we're about to wrap it up here. I think we're going to get kicked off in a few minutes. Yeah. But, you know, I think too, right now, when many of us are staying at home, you know, this is a perfect time to experiment with new products and to see what works for you, and also to develop a habit so that when you get back into your busy lifestyle, you'll be more inclined to stick with that routine. So that's what I'm finding now, is even with all the access to products I have, this time has allowed me to layer more and add, you know, really take it down to the décolleté, like you said earlier. So I hope that everybody takes those tips home with them tonight. Definitely order yourself some good skincare, self-care. And
if I can just say one thing, Brittany, people seem to think that stronger is better. And that be in everything, that people think if I get a high vitamin C, if I get a high glycolic acid, if I get a high hyaluronic acid, it's going to be better for my skin. But please understand that, number one, it's all about the formula. Everything in that ingredient has to support that. And by the way, and it's about the delivery system within the formula to be able to get that down to where it needs to go. But I'm going to tell you, I'm seeing the problem about it, just with what's time now and everyone being home, is that they are experimenting and giving themselves chemical burns. It's what you do every day, and being consistent is what's important. So don't jump up there. Just climb it slowly, you know.
That's great advice. And thank you so much for
you're so welcome.
An hour of your precious time. I mean, honestly, this has been such a treat for me. And again, you can see Nerida on our Brain Trust in our spring issue. We appreciate all your expert insight all the time, and I hope you stay safe and healthy. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in.
You too. Thank you so much for having me on, and bye, everybody.
Thanks, Nerida.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Bye.